Irregular past verb conjugation in English is a way to modify a verb's form expressing an action in the past tense. As I said in the previous video, there are 4 past tenses in English. I already covered the past simple with regular verbs, so in this video, I'll explain irregular verbs in the past simple and also past continuous because they use an irregular variation. To conjugate irregular verbs in the past simple in English, we first must understand what makes an irregular verb in the past. Regular verbs form the past simple and the past participle by adding ed or d. Irregular verbs do not follow the rule of adding ed or d, but they still form the past simple and past participle. However, these forms can be different for irregular verbs because they can change in many ways or not change at all. Irregular verbs can change in similar ways, but there is no pattern that can help with every conjugation. The best way to learn them is through repetition and practice. In this video, I will not be covering every irregular verb because there are simply too many of them. Instead, it's better to show the most useful ones that are practical to use for everyday conversations. Because English has so many, most of them are remnants of older English conjugation systems where different vowel changes were used to form the past tenses, and these patterns have persisted as the language evolved. There's lots of historical origin, frequent usage, and sound changes, so these verbs need to look good and sound good, which can explain why they follow irregular patterns. After I show their variations in the past simple and past participle, I'll explain the past continuous, which also follows irregular changes with to be. A very common verb in the past tense is to begin. To begin in the past simple looks like this. I began. You began. He, she, it began. We began, and they began. Just like regular verbs, the conjugation is the same across all pronouns, but unlike regular verbs, there is a letter change instead of adding ed or d. It's done on purpose so that the conjugation looks and sounds better. But let's not forget that the past participle can be different, and in this case, it's begun. Begun. Although the past participle is not useful for now, it will be very practical in the adjective form in future videos. Anyhow, like in the previous video, there is no sense in covering all subjects because the pattern is the same, so I will only emphasize the pronunciations. Another useful verb is to buy. In the past simple, it's bought. Bought. In this case, we add new letters to the irregular conjugation so that the verb sounds and looks better. Plus, the past participle is the same, bought. Another verb is to catch. In the past simple, it's caught. Caught. This pattern is similar to the previous verb, and its past participle is also the same, caught. Then, we have to come. In the past simple, it's came. Came. We have a letter change, but interestingly, its past participle is the same as the infinitive, come. Then we have to do in the past simple. Did. Did. Its past participle is done. Then we have to drink in the past simple. Drank. Drank. We have a letter change and its past participle has a different letter change. Drunk. Then we have to eat in the past simple. Ate. Ate. Its past participle is eaten. Then we have to feel in the past simple. Felt. Felt. Its past participle is also the same. Felt. Now we have to fly. Flew. Flew. Its past participle is flown. Now we have to give. Gave. Gave. There is a letter change, but interestingly, its past participle receives a letter in the infinitive. Given. Now we have to go, which is arguably the most irregular verb in the past. Went. Went. This past simple conjugation doesn't even follow any similar letters, but its past participle has a similarity. Gone. Now we have to grow. Grew. Grew. We have a letter change, but its past participle is grown, making the infinitive receive a letter. Now we have to have. Had. Had. Its past participle is the same. Had. Now we have to hear, which receives a letter in the past simple but changes the pronunciation. Heard. Heard. Its past participle is also the same. Heard. Now, we're getting to the final ones. To make. Made. Made. We have a letter change, and the past participle is also the same. Made. Now, we have to pay. Paid. Paid. Its pronunciation is similar to the previous verb, having a different spelling, but its past participle is the same. Paid. Now, we have to say. Said. Said. Its past participle is also the same. Said. Now, we have to run. Ran. Ran. We have a letter change, but its past participle interestingly takes the same form as the infinitive. Now, we have to see. In the past simple, the conjugation is saw, and its past participle is seen. But the word saw can be tricky because it can also be a noun, meaning a hand tool for cutting wood or other materials. Additionally, it can be a verb by itself. To saw, meaning to cut or make rapid motions with a saw. So by saying, I saw, it can mean that I perceived something with my eyes, I saw an airplane, or that I'm cutting something with a saw. I saw the wood. The difference can be told in context, and even then, the verb to saw is mainly used in the progressive, which is an easy way to tell the difference. I am sawing the wood. Finally, we have to sing in the past simple. Sang. Sang. We have a letter change, but its past participle has a different letter change. Sung. Now we have to speak. Spoke. Spoke. Its past participle is the same as the past simple, but receives an extra letter. Spoken. Now we have to said, which is interestingly the same across the present, past, and participle forms. So this is a very easy verb to remember. Now we have to stand. Stood. Stood. Its past participle is the same. Stood. Now we have to take. Took. Took. Its past participle is the infinitive receiving a letter. Taken. At last, we have to write. Wrote. Wrote. We have a letter change, and its past participle is written. Like I said, I will not cover every irregular verb because there are too many. The verbs that I showed with the irregular patterns are the most that you can know and use. In case you would like to learn more, the best way to do it is simply through repetition and practice. For the end, there is one important verb that needs to be thoroughly covered, even though I showed it in one of my previous videos, and that is the verb to be. As we know, the conjugations for to be in the present are am, are, and is, but in the past, they're irregular. In the past simple tense, to be refers to actions that existed and occurred in the past. Even though I already showed it, it's important to reevaluate this verb because it can be in the past continuous, which is something I'll explain in this video, considering that it's irregular. To be in the past simple will look like this. I was. You were. He, she, it was. We were, and they were. The past participle of to be is been, and the reason for these irregular changes comes from different verbs with similar meanings. Over time, some forms were less common and the separate verb variations combined into one irregular verb, so that can be an explanation. For the time being, it's important to discuss the irregularity of to be in the past continuous, also known as the progressive. To understand it, we need a brief reminder of the English progressive. The continuous, or progressive in English, is a verb tense indicating that an action is happening at the moment. Considering the past, we have the past continuous tense, and it is formed by any subject plus a conjugated verb to be in the past plus a participle. A participle in any progressive tense is a recognizable word that is used as an adjective describing an action that is currently taking place. In the past, however, the action was taking place and was ongoing and habitual. For most verbs, we take an infinitive and add the letters ing to the end. But despite having these letters, English can spell participles differently for better sound quality and writing purposes. I already covered this concept in my English progressive video, so I recommend going back and rewatching it just a bit, if you wish. Ultimately, we have the past continuous. It's a verb form that describes actions that were ongoing and habitual in the past. Often, it describes past actions that were happening at the same time or when another action occurred. In sentences using the past continuous, the word while usually indicates that multiple actions were taking place simultaneously, and the word when indicates that an action was already taking place when another action occurred. For instance, I was running while he was jumping. While I was running, he was jumping. In this case, while can be used before or after the first action because both actions are in the past continuous. But the second sentence must receive a comma because the first part is a fragment. Another example is, I was running when I saw a light in the sky. When I was running, I saw a light in the sky. When can be used before or after the past continuous action, and the interrupting action is in the past simple. Here are some more basic examples. I was walking. You were speaking. He was drinking. She was eating. It was working. We were making. They were singing. If you want, you can extend these examples to more advanced English and even use previous concepts to make your learning better. Still, we can form questions in the past continuous that answer yes or no, and doing so is no different than how you would form them with the verb to be. We place was or were before the subject and then continue with the participle with ing. Was I walking? Were you speaking? Was he drinking? Was she eating? Was it working? Were we making? Were they singing? All of these questions can be answered by yes or no, and their answers will change the word order. Additionally, we can add interrogatives like why, what, and how before was or were to ask more detailed questions about something that was happening in the past. Why was I walking? What was she eating? How was it working? What were we making? You can try answering these questions in any way you want. Anyhow, this is how irregular past verb conjugation and the past continuous work in English.